4 living creatures coming from the 4th direction. And then he says that on their heads was like a crystal. And John sees the same thing. He calls it a sea of glass like unto crystal. And it's a mirror. It's a reflection. And then we have the 4 beasts. When the 4 winds strive upon these beasts, they come up from the sea, the looking glass. They come from their world into ours. These 4 beasts are not just metaphors of, well, I think the bear is Russia. And I think, oh, let's imagine that the lion with eagle wings is Britain and America. That's just made up. The true understanding of this is that these kingdoms and these beasts are not, this is why they look the way they do. John and Ezekiel were not just writing metaphors and symbols. They were describing what God was revealing to them. That's what they look like. 4 faces, 4 wings, and all this stuff. Okay? So the barrier, here it is, the Bible's telling you the barrier between the 3rd and 4th dimension is like a mirror, like a sea of glass. Now watch this. Matthew 12:40. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights. Where? In the heart of the earth. Your heart has 4 chambers. Where did Jesus... We know that his flesh body stayed in the tomb. It was his soul that went to the heart of the earth. This is where the prison is. Sort of like if you've seen Superman, the Phantom Zone. This is where the prison is. And that's where Jesus went, to the heart of the earth. And your heart has 4 chambers. And by the way, your heart is surrounded by a sea of glass. It's called the pericardium. And it's a sac full of water that separates the heart, the 4 chambers, from the rest of your body. And it's made out of salt water. Isn't that beautiful? And then the fifth thing, what was the 5th thing here that we came up with here? The 4th dimensional object casts a 3-dimensional shadow. Just like this here. 3-dimensional object casts a 2-dimensional shadow. So hence, a 4th dimensional something or another, something that is in the 4th spatial direction, the spiritual world, where God and the angels all exist, casts a 3-dimensional shadow. When I read that, I shouted, because that is exactly what the King James Bible says, word for word. Colossians 2:16 and 17, let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of any holy day or of the new moon or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come. But the body is of Christ. Hebrews chapter 8 verse 4, for if he were on earth, he should not be a priest, seeing that there are priests that offer gifts according to the law, who serve unto the example and shadow of heavenly things. As Moses, this is so beautiful to me. There was an earthly tabernacle. Do you know what it was? It was a 3-dimensional shadow of the 4th dimensional tabernacle of God in heaven. And the Bible's telling us, don't try to go back to the shadow. It's just a shadow. Go to the real. If you said, boy, I sure am hungry, and a guy says, well, I got this big, juicy bacon cheeseburger here. Well, I wouldn't mind having a bite of that. Well, he says, here's the shadow of it. Why don't you eat on that for a while? Well, that won't fill me. That won't do anything for me. Bingo. You got it. People are this. You know what all this is doing? You know what the Knights Templar were looking for? I believe that some of these people are looking for the Ark of the Covenant. You know what it is? It's just the shadow of the real Ark of the New Testament that's in heaven. Okay? So, who serve under the example and shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God, when he was about to make the tabernacle, for see, saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern showed thee in the mount. Hebrews 10:1, for the law having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never with those sacrifices which they offered year by year continually make the comers thereunto perfect. And so if I were, if somebody was saying, where's Mike? And all of a sudden a shadow appeared around the corner, you'd say, well, I think Mike's coming. How you know that? Well, there's his shadow. You wouldn't just say, hi, Mike. How are you? You wouldn't talk to my shadow. There'd be something wrong with you. You know what you would do? You would wait patiently for Mike to show up. And all that Old Testament stuff, that's a shadow, a three-dimensional shadow. That Bible is right. That's not just some metaphorical language. That Bible is accurate and perfect in everything that it says. And all of these things in the Old Testament are simply a shadow of what's in heaven. That's so beautiful. So think about this. The law is the Old Testament, which is a shadow. This is earthly things. The New Testament is dealing with heavenly things. And the Old Testament, all of the Old Testament being a shadow of things to come, they all point to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's how the New Testament starts out. So watch this. Look at how the tabernacle was built. You'll see all these fours all over it, telling you it's a shadow of what's to come. Exodus 27:16, the gate of the court had 4 pillars. 1, 2, 3, 4. How do you get into that? Through the 4 pillars. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. That's the shadow of heavenly things. Look at the candlestick. In the candlestick shall be 4 bowls made like unto almonds. What is the candlestick? Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and light unto my path. There were 7 of them. The words of the Lord are pure words, as silver tried in the furnace of earth, purified 7 times. The 4 bowls held the oil that supplied the light. The 4 bowls. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Pointing you to the Gospels. Now, again, remember this has to do with what that 4th kingdom is and what it represents and what its goal is. Even the altar. Exodus 27:1. Thou shalt make an altar of shittim wood. Thorns. Thorns. That's what shittim is. Thorns. 5 cubits long and 5 cubits broad. The altar shall be 4 square. Look at that. And the height thereof shall be 3 cubits. Thou shalt make the horns upon it the 4 corners thereof. So it's 4 square, and it has 4 horns on the 4 corners. It's showing you that it's a shadow of what's in heaven, but it's not the real. It's only the shadow. Exodus 36, and every wise-hearted man among them that wrought the work of the tabernacle made 10 curtains of fine twined linen, and blue and purple and scarlet. How many colors? Linen, blue, purple, and scarlet. 4 colors. With cherubims of cunning work made he them. The length of one curtain was 20 and 8 cubits, and the breadth of one curtain was 4 cubits. And the curtains were of all one size. 28 by 4. How many 4s are in that? Well, let's see. 28 is 7 times 4. The 7 golden candlesticks and the 4 bowls that supplied the light. The tent covering, 28 cubits, 7 times 4 by 4 cubits. You see? It's all a shadow of things to come. It was a shadow of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Let me run down this very quickly. I'm going to show you. You're going to like this because we have the 4 Gospels. The first 3, I mentioned this a while ago, are the Synoptic Gospels because Matthew, Mark, and Luke, you find pretty much in Matthew 24, Luke 13, or excuse me, Mark 13, Luke 21, you'll find the Olivet, what they call the Olivet Discourse, which is Christ describing his second coming and the gathering of people and so on, and the wars and rumors of wars and all that. They're synoptic. That means they are similar in their story and their storyline. John's different. You have 3 cardinal dimensions. You have this way, and this way, and it's all the same to us. But that 4th direction is different. Think of this one. Think of Leah, Bilhah, Zillah, and Rachel. You know who those are? Those are the 4 that birthed the 12 tribes. And Leah and Zillah and Bilhah are pretty much the same in that Jacob didn't want them. Rachel's different. He was his true love, or she was his true love. Boy, I said that wrong. She was different. You have 3 in the fiery furnace, and you have 1 who joins them. He's the 4th. He's different. He's like the Son of Man. You have 3 beasts coming up in Daniel chapter 7. 3 beasts rising up, and 3 of them it mentions, and then the 4th one is diverse from the other 3. Are you seeing these patterns here? This 4th kingdom is not like any other earthly kingdom that has ever existed on the earth. It's different. The place they come from is different. Their bodies are different. Very, very, very interesting with this Bible. And I taught this a while ago. We have spirit, soul, body, and the new body. The new body is different than this one. Now watch this, okay? Here's a picture of how you're made. Even your physical body is a shadow of what's to come. Your DNA. And remember this, DNA is like the 2 books of the Bible. David said, in thy book all my members were written. So it's the book of God, it's Old Testament, New Testament. Those are the 2 rungs of the ladder, and the Old Testament and the New Testament are joined together by the 4. Adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. Here's the interesting thing. When you just have 1 rung of the ladder, you don't have DNA, you have what's called RNA. It is a single rung form of DNA, but it's ribonucleic acid. Ribonucleic acid actually has the 4 chemicals in it, but one of them is different. You have adenine, guanine, cytosine, but in RNA, when it's just the single, like the Old Testament, it's uracil. But here's what happens when the Old Testament joins with the New Testament. Uracil is taken out and replaced with thiamine. It's different. It's right. We are even our bodies are a shadow of things to come, pointing us to the 4 Gospels, the beauty of salvation by grace through faith. Now, watch this one. Okay, I made this graphic years ago. Decided not to change it. Christ's first coming starts us off in the 4 Gospels. Starts off with the book of Matthew. From Genesis 1 to the end of the Old Testament was roughly from Genesis 1 to the coming of Christ was 4,000 years. From the end of the Old Testament to Matthew was 400 years. Matthew is the 40th book of the Bible, and it begins the 4 Gospels. And you see the verse, Galatians 4:4, but when the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth His Son, made of a woman, made under the law. And so the interesting thing here is that all of this stuff in the Old Testament